Baltimore police confirm the first homicide victim of the new year is a 16-year-old boy.
I want justice for my son.
New tonight, his mother's pleas for justice and her message to the killer. Plus, Governor Moore expected to roll out his plan to tackle juvenile crime alongside DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi, why prosecutors say they'll be paying close attention. Video shows a high school teacher smoking with a group of students.
I just thought that it was a disgusting thing to do.
Why one student says their fellow classmates were taken advantage of, and how the school is responding. Concerns being raised over a $73 million project to add bike lanes to roads citywide, where a highway engineer says city leaders are falling short.
Tracking heavy rain for tomorrow, putting us in a weather alert. I'm breaking down which areas could see flooding.
Live from WBFF in Baltimore, this is Fox 45 News at 10.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Kai Jackson.
And I'm Mary Bubala. Our next weather maker is headed east right now, bringing a threat of potential heavy rain and flooding to the Baltimore area.
The Annapolis Office of Emergency Management sent out this notice this afternoon telling people to be alert for flooding. Now, the office is offering sandbags to any residents concerned about floodwater in their homes.
And several area school systems will be dismissing early tomorrow. Hartford and Cecil counties will be closing 3 hours early, and Anne Arundel County will close 2 hours early. Stay up to date on any school closures at foxbaltimore.com. Meteorologist Jasmine Lomax will be timing out the entire storm system in just a few minutes for us.
As the calendar turns to 2024, there's a storm brewing in Annapolis as parents and prosecutors demand change to the state's juvenile justice laws.
And we are learning the first homicide victim this year in Baltimore is a 16-year-old boy. And tonight, his mother is channeling her grief into a fight for justice.
Nothing I talk about not going to bring my son back. I'm not going to see that pretty smile. I'm not going to see that again.
Well, tonight, our team of reporters looking into the state's juvenile crime response as lawmakers prepare to return to Annapolis on Wednesday.
We begin with Fox 45's Keith Daniels and the message of a mother who's grieving her murdered son. Keith?
Well, Kai and Mary, Noah Gibson was a student at Carver Vocational Technical High School. His young life cut short over the holiday break. And tonight, his mother vowing, in her words, to not lose another son to the streets. In Baltimore, the face of the city's first homicide victim of 2024. Outside her home in West Baltimore, Chantrice Gibson, the mother of the young shooting victim, with the name behind the number.
Just to know, my son's name was Noah Ezekiel Gibson. And he was just a big heart. He was lovable.
Gibson says her son had just turned 16 years old.
I love my son with all my heart. That was my baby.
Investigators say officers found Noah shot in an alley on Gorman Avenue near West Baltimore Street after responding to a shot spotter alert just after 2 a.m. January 2nd. A neighbor's back alley camera picking up the sound of about a half dozen gunshots. Who did the shooting and why? Questions so far unanswered.
My main thing is why. When children are doing something wrong, you don't have to pull out a gun. You know, there's other ways of handling situations instead of handling it how way that you feel like you want to handle it.
Her son, one of the latest victims of the city's juvenile crime crisis, young people, both victims and perpetrators of the violence. Gibson says her son was not perfect, even admitting at one time he'd been under the supervision of the Department of Juvenile Services, not saying exactly why.
When you are praying, and everybody knows when you're praying, we can't control our children all the time. You know, our kids get older. You got to make your own decision or make the right decision.
Meanwhile, the search for a suspect in a deadly shooting that took a mother's son away.
Nothing I talk about not going to bring my son back. I'm not going to see that pretty smile. I'm not going to see that again. I'm not going to see him coming into my mom hungry and, you know, things like that.
Well, if you have any information that can help homicide detectives, they want to hear from you. You can remain anonymous by calling Metro Crime Stoppers. Well, live tonight, Keith Daniels, Fox 45 News.
Keith, thank you. Well, we have seen several young people fall victim to gun violence in recent months. As of 2023, also got off to a violent start. On New Year's Day last year, 17-year-old Deja Garrison was killed in a double shooting in East Baltimore. A 27-year-old was sentenced earlier this week. He faces 60 years in prison. Less than a week after Garrison's death, 16-year-old Deontay Dorsey was killed in a mass shooting outside the Edmondson Village Shopping Center. 4 other people were injured, all 5 victims, students at Edmondson Westside High School. Then in March, 16-year-old Isaiah Carter was gunned down just steps from Patterson High School during school hours. His mother spoke to Fox 45 News last week, saying she fears a similar thing could happen to her other sons if lawmakers don't take action.
My son's death was preventable. The children who walked to the shopping center last year, that was preventable. Why would we tell children that they're, commit these crimes and you'll be fine? There is no charges. There are no charges.
Lawmakers return to Annapolis on Wednesday for this year's legislative session. Juvenile crime is expected to be a central focus, as we've heard from police and prosecutors saying the laws in place keep their hands tied. Governor Wes Moore will unveil his juvenile crime policy tomorrow, but some are concerned about the governor's support of DJS Secretary Vincent Schiraldi. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost has a preview of the session.
Governor Wes Moore is expected to roll out his juvenile crime and public safety legislative priorities Tuesday. And all eyes will be on the Secretary of the Department of Juvenile Services and the governor to see if there will be a push for policy change.
Thank you all for joining us today.
After saying this,
the public will see our complete rollout prior to the legislative session.
Governor Wes Moore will make good on that promise Tuesday. He's expected to roll out his plan to address juvenile crime and public safety statewide. Standing with him, the man who many people are growing frustrated with.
I think Schiraldi really came out short.
Secretary Vincent Schiraldi facing criticism amid juvenile crime taking off around Maryland and a sense of little to no accountability for their actions. Those feelings on full display during a late December town hall in Baltimore City.
I think there's a lot more accountability he needs to answer to.
Do you think that he understands the problem that is going on?
No, he doesn't. And he doesn't have to understand because it doesn't affect him directly. It's a paycheck to him.
What do you want to hear from the secretary about what's going on?
His resignation. I'm sorry to be so blunt, but I just don't think he gets it.
Despite pressure mounting for change, Governor Moore standing by his pick to lead DJS.
We needed to get a reformer, a person with a history of reforming systems inside of that seat.
Meanwhile, prosecutors, police, and parents all calling for change to the juvenile justice policies.
We can only hope that they'll not listen to just folks like me or my 23 colleagues across the state who are the chief prosecutors in our counties, but hopefully they'll listen to their citizens, because their citizens are saying the exact same thing. Enough's enough.
They catch these kids, and then 2 hours later they're released.
If you do a crime, you've killed someone, you've stolen a car, you're committing theft repeatedly, I don't understand why there should not be a response.
Some of our laws that have been passed recently do make it a little more challenging for us to hold them accountable.
DJS is making moves ahead of lawmakers returning to Annapolis Wednesday.
Their legislative priorities for 2024. The roundtable starts Wednesday at 7 o'clock. You can watch it live on foxbaltimore.com.
It's been a nice and quiet day today, but tomorrow the next weather maker moves in You'll start to notice impacts tomorrow morning. We're looking at showers across the state. In western Maryland, possibly some snow, but with temperatures well above freezing, a lot of that will transition into rain lasting into the afternoon. That's when we could be dealing with heavy rain at times, and even into the evening and night, still tracking rain across the region. It's Wednesday when we'll start to dry out and enjoy a brief dry pattern. That's before another weather maker moves in for the weekend. This is the system that we're watching. We have a low pressure system, and notice the snow and the rain and storms around that. That low pressure system will continue to drive east, and the rain will continue to spread across the region. Coming up, I'll have a look at the timing of the system and the impacts that we could see here in my Weather Authority forecast. Back to you.
Jasmine, thank you. We'll stay with us over the next 24 hours as we continue to track this storm. Be sure to chime in with any photos of flooding or damage in your area. Do it safely and make sure you are in a good location to do that. You can also have the forecast right in your fingertips with the Fox 45 Weather Authority app. Just search WBFF in your app store. We are following some breaking news out of Fort Worth, Texas. At least 21 people are injured following an explosion at a hotel downtown. Happened around 3 o'clock Central Time. Emergency officials say a gas leak likely led to the explosion. Fire crews are sweeping the hotel again at this hour. It's unclear if anyone is trapped inside the hotel. Stay with Fox 45 News as we continue to follow this breaking news.
Coming up on Fox 45 News at 10 o'clock tonight, concerns over Baltimore's multi-million-dollar bike lane initiative, why some argue the city isn't listening to research or public comment on those proposals. City Council President Nick Mosby is trying to strip Mayor Brandon Scott's veto power over City Council district maps, the fallout from a months-long debate and what that could mean for Baltimore voters. And video shows a Parkville High School teacher apparently smoking with her students. A student at the school shares their thoughts on the viral video coming up after the break.
A Baltimore County high school has launched an investigation into one of its own teachers after a video surfaced showing the teacher smoking an unknown substance with students.
Project Baltimore's Chris Papps obtained the video, and students are talking.
I don't think that people should stay silent about issues like this.
Project Baltimore is not identifying this person.
I think it's inappropriate to take advantage of students that way.
Because they are currently a student at Parkville High School.
It puts a bad name on Parkville, and It definitely is a distraction.
We spoke with this student about this video that has recently surfaced at the school and quickly became the center of a scandal.
She's fairly young in her teaching career, and I just thought that it was a disgusting thing to do, knowing that these kids are, I mean, they jump at an opportunity to do that with, you know, the cool teacher.
The video was recorded in January 2023, 1 year ago. It begins with this teenager, who we are not identifying because she is a minor. She is sitting outside at a table with 3 other people who she introduces by name. 2 of them are also teenagers who we are not identifying. The third is this woman in the hooded sweatshirt, identified in the video as Spraker.
You got a Spraker?
At 14 seconds into the video, the teenager pauses as Spraker leans over and offers her an unknown substance. The teenager then inhales and blows smoke into the camera. The video ends. Project Baltimore has confirmed all 3 teenagers in the video are students at Parkville High School. The woman in the sweatshirt, identified as Spraker, is 25-year-old Sierra Spraker, a social studies teacher at Parkville High School. I'm calling for Sierra Spraker. Project Baltimore reached out to Spraker. We texted, emailed, and left a voicemail, but never heard back. The next day, what appears to be Spraker's social media accounts on Instagram and LinkedIn, which identify her as a Baltimore County teacher, were shut down. We also called all 3 students who appear in the video. We spoke with 2 of the students and a relative for the third. They all declined to comment on the video, which was recorded 12 months ago. We asked the student why it took a year for the video to surface.
I think what took so long was that the teacher had become friends with so many kids and they wanted to protect her, and I think they just didn't want her getting in trouble.
Last week, as the video was circulating around the school, Parkville High School's principal sent this letter home to parents. The principal references the video, saying it shows a teacher engaged in inappropriate behavior with a group of students. Project Baltimore, on Wednesday of last week, sent the video to Baltimore County Public Schools' central office, asking what actions, if any, the district is taking to address the situation. We received a response saying this incident is under investigation. Sources tell Fox 45 Spraker was teaching Tuesday, January 2nd at the school, but she has been out since. What do you think should happen?
I think she should have her license revoked. I think she shouldn't be teaching at any school, and I think some real legal repercussions should be taken.
Project Baltimore will continue to follow this story. If you have any information on this incident, or if you have any other concerns about your child's education, call our hotline, send me an email, follow us on social media, or go to foxbaltimore.com. I'm Chris Pabst, and this is Project Baltimore.
Well, the clock is ticking for Maryland lawmakers to return to Annapolis. How a potential billion-dollar deficit will play into their decisions this session.
It is very busy on the HD radar as we get prepared for our next weather maker. We're already seeing alerts in place ahead of that system, including flood watches for much of the region. We're looking at the threat of heavy rain along with gusty winds. I'll break down the timing coming up in my Weather Authority forecast.
Well, we're going to call it the calm before the storm then. A look at the Inner Harbor tonight. A really nice winter night out there. Stay with us. We'll be right back. As the legislative session begins on Wednesday, one of the top priorities for lawmakers will be the state budget and a possible deficit. A report released this summer predicts Maryland will have a $1.8 billion deficit by 2028, despite Governor Larry Hogan leaving Maryland with a budget surplus when he left office. Taxpayer advocate David Williams joined us on Fox 45 Morning News talking about Maryland's next steps.
What a difference a year makes. You know, this time last year, a new governor was coming in. There's a lot of optimism, a nice, healthy surplus for the state. And now we're looking at a structural deficit this year of $400 million. And that's going to climb to about $2 billion in the next 6 to 8 years. And when the legislature comes in, a lot of decisions are going to have to be made. And what I'm looking for, Tom, is how they address this and what they talk about. Because at the beginning of these sessions, they like to talk about new programs, spending more money. They can't do that this year because of this deficit. And the governor is going to have to pare back some of his priorities because of this deficit.
Williams went on to talk about the Kerwin education plan and the impact that it's having on Maryland. You can find the full thing right now on foxbaltimore.com.
Baltimore County Executive Johnny Olszewski is releasing his legislative wish list for the county. He says he hopes state lawmakers will secure funds for community projects, modernize infrastructure around the state, and support public safety. Olszewski recently took over as head of the Maryland Association of Counties. He says that role will allow him to better communicate with state lawmakers. Fox 45's Mackenzie Frost will be in Annapolis following every step of this year's legislative session over the next 3 months. Our coverage begins Wednesday. You can follow along on air and online at foxbaltimore.com. Frustration over those new bike lanes around Baltimore is growing. How residents are fighting back against the rise in congestion.
The city council president makes a move to reduce the mayor's power on shaping the city's districts. The new legislation in the works. We are following new developments in 3 big stories at 10:30. Mayor Brandon Scott has been vocal about his collaboration with City State's Attorney Ivan Bates to reduce crime in Baltimore. Fox 45 News examines why the mayor wasn't as vocal about Bates's predecessor.
The controversy surrounding Baltimore's proposed city council districts, why Council President Nick Mosby wants to reduce Mayor Scott's veto power.
And more questions about Baltimore's bike lane plan as engineers and residents argue the city is falling short in its background research. And we begin there. Baltimore's bike lane initiative comes with a price tag of about $73 million.
Fox 45's Jeff Abel joins us live with some of the concerns surrounding the plan and its implementation. Jeff?
Well, you know, there are glaring questions tonight about how the city researched its investigation and how it's justifying many of these bike lanes in the city. In fact, transportation officials are only now admitting they're beginning to count exactly how many bikers are biking in Baltimore. On this stretch of Harford Road, where the city has eliminated 2 lanes of traffic and installed 2 lanes for bikes, drivers are backed up and fired up.
How many bikes have you seen?
I haven't seen a bike around here since I've been around.
How many bicycles do you see?
None!
As the city races to redesign roads to accommodate bikes, there are glaring questions whether the city's research has been thorough enough.
Has DOT in the past done traffic studies on usage and type of usage?
At a recent hearing at City Hall, transportation officials admitted they're unsure how many bikes are actually using city roads.
We did get a grant where we have installed some bike counters in certain locations. Beyond the bike counters, I don't know that we have actual data.
If we are basing millions of dollars on a plan that is supposed to be moving forward into communities, we need to have that data readily available and available to the council people.
Transportation officials say their redesign of city roads is guided by a master plan approved more than a decade ago, a plan which demands community input, yet some residents insist they never had a voice.
And the people who are being affected and victimized by these decisions, these arbitrary and capricious spending of dollars, seem to have no voice. We've been ghosted by government.
The community engagement needs to be stronger there.
In Lauraville last month, the city did seek community input about another stretch of Harford Road now set to be redesigned. Georgia Corso walked into the meeting with concerns and walked out fuming.
It was there to support the bike lanes. It was not there to get a feel of what the neighborhood wanted.
Without proper research, retired state highway engineer Gene Simmers believes the city has fallen short.
Gives all the appearances that it's just being jammed through because of a few very diligent and very strong supporters of bicycles.
Well, in the next 4 years, city planners project bike lanes will cost taxpayers some $73 million. We're live tonight. Jeff Abel, Fox 45 News.
Thank you, Jeff. There's also frustration over bike lanes in Baltimore County. The County Planning Commission is deciding whether to add 70 miles of new bike lanes, including between York Road and Charles Street in Towson. Now, some residents say that would be a problem area because of the high traffic in the area.
Would you ride a bike on this road?
Nah, I won't even let my kids ride a bike.
As a resident, I just don't know how much use actual bikers would get out of them. I think you need to get the data first from the bikers and say, are you using these roads? You know, is this the route you would even take?
The Planning Commission is set to vote on that proposal later this month.
The back and forth over Baltimore's proposed council districts continues as City Council President Nick Mosby introduced a measure to limit the mayor's veto power regarding city council redistricting maps. The city charter requires voters to approve a new district map in each election year after a U.S. Census. Mayor Scott vetoed the city council's map proposal in November, instead opting to submit his own proposal to voters. Mosby says the mayor didn't give the council enough time to review the map before submission, and this amendment would allow council more time to review and vote on the mayor's plan in the future. Mosby released a statement this afternoon saying he made it clear in November that the system needed an overhaul. He shared his frustration during a city council meeting shortly after the mayor's veto.
The council's map quantitatively was better than the other map. What I would say is it wasn't a different map. We just took a good map and made it a little bit better based off of what we heard from our residents. And it's unfortunate that we stand here today And for those of you who are not participating, who are not listening, who are not engaged in this process in the way that you should, this is not the way government should operate, period. We shouldn't open up a city council meeting and receive a letter like this. There's been a lot of time, a lot of attention, a lot of work that has been put into doing the right thing for the citizens of Baltimore, and I cannot say that this is good government.
Mosby formally introduced his proposal at tonight's city council meeting. It would also require the mayor to conduct several public meetings before introducing a district map to the council. If Mosby's amendment is approved, it would go on the ballot in November. And you'll notice several city council members wearing masks during tonight's meeting. We are told it's a precautionary measure since multiple council members are ill.
Baltimore recorded a 9-year low of 263 people murdered in 2023. Many say City State's Attorney Ivan Bates' tough-on-crime approach is a driving force behind that decline. Mayor Brandon Scott has publicly supported Bates' policies, but some critics say he was less vocal when it came to addressing the policies of former City State's Attorney Marilyn Mosby. Fox 45's Rebecca Pryor explains.
Yeah, now that the city's homicide rate is seeing significant improvements, Mayor Brandon Scott eager to embrace a new city state's attorney, but in the past when given the opportunity to denounce the previous administration's policies, time and time again, Mayor Scott remaining silent.
Following almost a decade of shockingly high homicide rates, Baltimore City ushering in a new tough-on-crime state's attorney.
Well, if you're breaking the law, you're going to walk around for legal handguns on the streets, bring your toothbrush with you, because we're going to send you to jail.
Immediately after taking office, Ivan Bates throwing out the progressive non-prosecution policies of his predecessor, Marilyn Mosby.
Clearly, the data suggests that there is no public safety value in prosecuting these low-level offenses.
But in Bates's first year, new data revealing Baltimore City's annual homicides finally falling below 300 for the first time in 9 straight years, marking the largest single-year homicide reduction in the city's history.
I knew deep in my heart that we needed to do something different.
Mayor Brandon Scott now throwing his full support behind the changes made under the Bates administration. But when pressed on Mosby's policies in the past, time and time again, Scott refusing to speak out.
I am focused about my work. I don't have time with the amount of stuff happening in Baltimore to worry about other people's work.
Are you saying that the state's attorney's office isn't doing their job?
No, I'm saying that we, as I've said to you before, Mackenzie, that what we are doing, what I am doing is ending these generations of fingerprints. I'm not going to continue to get dragged into this progressive versus this versus that. I do what's best for Baltimore.
According to political analyst Richard Vatz,
I do think he's trying to take credit for an accomplishment that is not majorly his.
The mayor's silence may have prevented the last year's historic crime reductions from happening sooner.
He appears to genuinely want to reduce violence, but he doesn't appear to ever be willing to take courageous steps, one of which would be when he had a totally irresponsible state's attorney, he wouldn't say anything. He wouldn't say anything even half critical of her until she's out of office.
And even with Mosby now out of office,
to blame one person or give one person the credit is a false narrative. We did the work.
But in terms of accountability, and could we have gotten here sooner, do you think it would have helped to call out those selective prosecution policies?
I don't think you hear me very clearly. I don't do performative stuff. That's not me. I focus on the work.
Mayor Scott still unwilling to answer when asked if his support for the former state's attorney could have hurt the city's crime fight.
He often avoids that question because he is very, very resolute in not accepting any criticism of his policies. He could have had a change in Baltimore's situation a long time ago.
And over the last 2 years, Fox 45 has sent the mayor's office dozens of questions pressing him on Mosby's selective prosecution policies. Not once did he speak out against them. Reporting from City Hall, Rebecca Pryor, Fox 45 News.
This graph shows the homicide trends from January of 2020 through October of 2023. The first 2 summers of Mayor Scott's administration saw a spike in murders. More than 300 people were killed each of those years, but that didn't happen in 2023. Eric Barron, the U.S. Attorney for the state of Maryland, first announced his Al Capone style of prosecution in August of 2022. Ivan Bates, the city state's attorney, was sworn in around this time last year with a strong message to anyone thinking about committing a crime.
So I say to you,
is thinking about grabbing your illegal handgun and going on the streets of Baltimore City, grab your toothbrush as well, because you're going to need it.
And then we also see another drop around July of 2023. It was around that time that Eric Barron and Ivan Bates announced a few big wins. In the span of a few days, the two offices announced 8 defendants pled guilty to or were sentenced for gun crimes. All of them were repeat violent offenders.
Baltimore police have charged 30-year-old Jamal Artis with attempted murder following a New Year's Day shooting in a Baltimore parking garage. Happened along Guilford Avenue downtown. Police say Artis shot a 22-year-old woman multiple times. She was sent to the hospital. Artis faces 3 charges and is currently being held at Central Booking.
And Arundel County police are releasing body camera footage from a deadly use of force incident on October 29th. Police say an officer chased and tased 21-year-old Tavon Coleman after Coleman hit another officer trying to detain him. And we warn you, the footage is disturbing.
Stop rotating you! Get down! Get your hands behind your back down!
Well, according to police, they were searching Coleman's car for drugs and guns when they say Coleman hit an officer and tried to escape. Officers say Coleman hit his head on the ground when he was tased. He died nearly 2 months later as a result of that injury. The Maryland Attorney General's office is now investigating.
The Secretary of Homeland Security is back at the southern border. His message to Congress that Republicans are launching an impeachment inquiry against him.
And we're getting ready for a quiet night with mostly cloudy skies. Temperatures stay above average. And then tomorrow, right after sunrise, our next weather maker moves in. I'll break down the timing and the impacts that could be felt here in my Weather Authority forecast.